Welcome to the Thoughtful Leader podcast. My name is Ben Brearley. I'm a leadership coach and the founder of Thoughtful Leader. The Thoughtful Leader podcast is all about short, sharp leadership advice because thoughtful leadership is good leadership. Welcome to episode 303 of the Thoughtful Leader podcast. In this episode, I'm going to be talking about feedback, and in particular, if feedback's got you down, what you can do about it. And in this episode, I'm also introducing to you the new useful feedback journal, which I've just created. And it's a great way to help you process feedback and get better at accepting it or rejecting it, depending on what you decide. So let's get into this episode right now. Now, this episode is all about introducing you to one of my newest creations, which is called the Useful Feedback Journal. It's a useful thinking product similar to my useful thinking journal, but this one is tailored specifically to handling and accepting and processing feedback that you receive from people in your workplace, for example, or just in life in general. So it's a digital product, and the reason I created this journal is because what I find is that people use a lot of phrases like, oh, feedback's a gift. Oh, feedback's amazing. You should be asking for more feedback. But the reality is, what I've experienced is that a lot of people are not very good at giving feedback. They say things that are unspecific, not useful to the person receiving the feedback. Maybe they even say things in a way that are quite harmful. And sometimes people have malicious intent for feedback, where they try to say negative things that makes a person feel bad or feel less confident, for example, depending on the situation. So that can even happen as well. So what I'm saying to you here is that feedback is not always a gift. Sometimes it's absolute rubbish. And so people need to be better at giving feedback. That is true. But the reason I created this journal is because I want leaders, thoughtful leaders in particular, to be more comfortable in receiving feedback from others. And when I talk about receiving feedback, I've got a bit of a different approach to thinking about feedback than some others. Some people will tell you that, oh, your feedback's the greatest thing ever, it's such a gift, all that stuff. And as I've just outlined, I don't think that's always true. So this journal is designed to help you process feedback that you received and to reflect on it and take out the key learnings that you can get. And at the end of this reflection process, I even encourage you in the journal to decide, am I going to accept this feedback, or do I decide that I'm going to actually reject this feedback? So let me tell you about why I created this journal personally. So a couple of years ago now, I received some pretty negative feedback after I delivered a workshop for a various group of leaders in an organization. The feedback wasn't all negative, but there were a few negative people in the feedback that I got. And it was a little bit unexpected for me because walking away from that session, I didn't really know that I had provoked such a response from certain people, because during the session, no one said anything, and I didn't really notice anything from body language either at that time. And I'm usually quite attentive to that stuff. So it caught me by surprise and it hurt me, right? It hit me right inside, and I went, oh, in my gut. Got a bit of a gut feeling on this one. And I thought, well, this is not good, because if I'm having this sort of reaction to feedback, then it might prevent me from seeking out feedback in the future, which could actually reduce my effectiveness. Because if I'm not receiving feedback, maybe I am not open to feedback, and therefore I don't get told about things that I could improve. And I can't be the only one who experiences some bad feedback like this sometimes, or where it really hurts, right? It hits you in the gut and you worry about it and you think about it a lot. And I thought, you know what? We need a better way to process this stuff. So I started to reflect on the feedback and actually work through it sort of systematically to try to understand more about how the feedback was helping me or hurting me, what it meant, how I felt about it, and all those good things. And so, yeah, the way that I did it was in a structured reflection process. And so I thought this could be quite a cool thing to provide to other thoughtful leaders as well, because I think it's a common challenge. And what I did notice about the feedback I received from that workshop a couple of years ago was that the way the feedback was packaged and the message that was communicated to me was actually not what I thought the takeaway was. So, for example, the feedback was, pointing out how I facilitated a certain part of the session and some interactions with some strong personalities at the time. And if I'd have taken that feedback on face value, there wasn't really much I could actually get out of it. But what I actually drew from that feedback was that I actually didn't prepare the workshop as best as I could, and I didn't set up the right environment in the workshop to be successful and to reduce the chance of those negative interactions within the workshop. So so what I'm trying to communicate here is that the insights and the learning that I got from this feedback was not what the person said. It was actually the meaning that I extracted out of it through going through this reflective process. So sometimes people will give you feedback, and what they say is not really the real lesson here. The real lesson actually comes from your interpretation and processing of that feedback. So that's why I created this journal. Now, as part of the journal process, so basically it's a digital journal, so it's a PDF file. What I do recommend is use a tablet or like a digital notebook where you can write on it with a stylus or something like that. But I also think printing it out on paper and handwriting is useful as well for journaling, because it helps you to reinforce that mind-body connection and you tend to process the information better. Also, when we handwrite, we tend to slow down. So that's why handwriting can be very useful as well. Now, as part of this reflection process in this journal, there's a series of templates, and they follow a reflective process which I call retreat, reflect, extract, and act. So retreat is all about pausing first and taking a moment to gather your thoughts before you respond to this feedback or before you process or consider the feedback. Then we want to reflect, which is about answering specific questions to help you understand what was said and how you felt about it. Then the third step is really useful. It's extract, which is identifying the useful parts of this feedback and leaving the rest behind, getting rid of it. You don't need to take on all the feedback. And then step 4 is to act. So step 4 is about deciding, okay, what's the next step I can take based on this feedback if I need to. So that's how the journal is designed, these reflective templates. But through the journal as well, I think every 4 reflections that you do, so let's say you received 4 pieces of feedback and you reflected on them, then there's a separate template that's a progressive reflection, I've called it, where you reflect on your overall process with how you feel about feedback and how you feel about receiving feedback and processing it. So I see this journal as a bit of a journey to try to help you develop skills to be better at asking for and accepting and processing feedback. So it's not something that I'd recommend you need to journal every day. It's actually something to keep in your back pocket and to go, okay, when I receive feedback or when I ask for feedback, I'm going to process the feedback with this journal. So it doesn't have to be something you journal on every day, but hopefully across the journey of the 20 odd reflections that you get in the digital journal, you will feel more confident in reflecting on feedback and taking the benefits, or even deciding, this feedback's not for me and I'm not going to gain any benefit of it. And so it's a really useful tool and I use it myself. And I did a pilot of this journal, the Useful Feedback Journal, earlier on this year. And some of the feedback I got here was from Liz, who's a manager in USA. And she said, the journal gave me an easy, structured way to reflect on my leadership and make meaningful changes that are already having an impact. I especially valued the deeper dive questions, which prompted me to explore new aspects of my work and leadership style that I might never have considered otherwise. So that's some feedback from a thoughtful leader who used the journal already, which is pretty cool. The other thing the journal will help you do with this reflective process is to help you track feedback and patterns. So patterns that you notice about how you act or how you receive feedback, or patterns in your behavior and your skills and performance as well. So sometimes you might notice patterns over time where, people are consistently raising this sort of feedback. Maybe that's something I should really work on. So that can be really useful to find patterns as well. Another benefit I find of using this journal, and another user in the pilot process told me that she actually started to find benefit in reflecting with her team and helping her team get better at receiving feedback as well, so she could provide more feedback. So it can be used as a bit of a team reflection tool as well, which is quite cool. One thing I also include in the journal is emotions reference, which is where you actually dig deeper into what emotions you feel as part of the feedback, which I think is a really important part of processing feedback and moving forward constructively. So all this is to be said, I'd love it if you checked out this journal. It's the Useful Feedback Journal. You can find it on my website. So I'll put a link in the show notes page, thoughtfulleader.com/podcast/303. Link there to the Useful Feedback Journal. It's available for $35 Australian as a digital download. And yeah, I really hope you find it useful and use it as a tool to go on a journey to improve the way you receive and consider feedback. And I think it'll be a really beneficial tool for you and other thoughtful leaders. So I really appreciate you listening to this. Hopefully you find the journal useful, and give me some feedback on the show notes page as well. If you want to leave a comment there, be much appreciated as well. So thank you for listening to this episode. Hopefully you find the journal useful, and keep up the thoughtful leadership as always. And I'll be back next week.